Foolish Optimist. I am so excited that you're here with me today. We have Juan Diego Mazuera Arias. He is a Colombian immigrant, an organizer, a policy strategist, and he has turned a story of struggle into his own mission for change. Brought to East Charlotte as a child, raised undocumented, JD grew up navigating the system that often ignores families like his. And now he's running for Charlotte City Council to represent East Charlotte, not as a politician, but as someone shaped by its schools, its bus routes, and its unbreakable community. So, JD, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited.
Thanks, Amy. I'm so excited to be on.
Yeah. Could you maybe kick us off with a little bit more of your story and why, the big why of why you're running in 2026? What made it happen?
Yeah. As I was introduced, my name is JD. I was born in Pereira, Colombia. So we're like the capital of the coffee region. And I'm a big coffee drinker. My family and I migrated to the States when I was 8 months old. We first lived in Queens, New York. We lived in Maspeth for 2 years
Nice.
until 2001 when we moved to East Charlotte. And that is really, it is the community that I remember that made me who I am
Right.
today. It's currently where I live. Um, Me running for city council was really never in the plans. I just recently moved back in September of last year of 2024. And while I was doing my 9 to 5, I was organizing Latino neighborhoods to vote for Harris and Walz for the presidential election.
Yes.
And then it came to my attention. Folks kept coming to me and talking to me, elected officials, government officials, community leaders. And they're like, hey, we have something you should do. And I said, what is it? And they're like, you should run for city council.
What
And I
is it?
said, yeah, I was like, sure, why not? Let's do it. And they said, you would be in a primary and you would be
Right.
going against an incumbent. And I said, no, thank you. Next, please. Um, and it wasn't really because I didn't want to challenge the status quo. It was
Right.
more so Charlotte City Council is made up of predominantly Democratic folks, right?
Right.
Only 2 out of the 12 seats on city council, including the mayor, only 2 of those seats are Republican. The rest are Democratic. We're a big blue city. So it was about the need of the community, right? If folks in the community loved the incumbent, if they loved the representation they had on city council, then who am I to say that they deserve a different form of
Right.
representation? I'm very, very community oriented. I'm driven by the needs and wants of the community. So then I set out on a journey from November after election day till to this day, to talk to as many East Charlotteans as I could and hear what they wanted. And resoundingly, unanimous consensus was they wanted different voice on city council.
Ready for a change. I got
Ready
it.
for a change. Yep.
That's honestly very refreshing. I do think a lot of people, and I think something that we've seen, especially as millennials and Gen Zers, we've seen a lot of people get into politics because they want to see their name in the lights. They don't care that people are really happy and happy with their representation. So that's really refreshing and almost logical. Crazy how that sounds like different.
Yeah, and it's very interesting too because we started our campaign. We officially launched with a community event on Sunday, April 27th.
Okay.
And once word spread about my candidacy and my run, folks started to report, the local media started to say that this was an unusual early start to a campaign. Well,
Interesting.
what I found out was that typically city council campaigns, they announce when they officially file their name for candidacy, which is
Okay.
July. And it's typically 2 months or so before the primary election. So you only really have 2 months to reach the community to win a primary election. But the thing is that a lot of folks don't primary, right? And if
Right.
they do primary, it's typically folks that, to your point, just want their name and flashy lights
Yeah.
and have the resources and specifically the financial resources to do those things. Right?
Right.
But I said, no, we are an unusual campaign because we're actually starting from the ground up rather than the top up.
Right.
And I think that's really the cornerstone of this campaign is that we're defining what it means to be a politician. We're defining what it means to be a public official, an elected official. But for me, I guess the biggest mission for me is I'm trying to redefine what public service means. And it means to serve the public. And that's it.
Yes. That's we're gonna clip that part for social media for sure. I mean, that's like one of the best things I've heard in a really long time. And what's crazy is I was looking at the vote Mecklenburg numbers, right? And turnout for like New York, you were just, I believe you were just in New York, right? Getting your master's. Is that correct?
Yeah. A master's at
Yeah.
NYU Wagner.
So like New York, these city council and these city races are on off years, which means not a lot of people show up. So I was looking at Vote Mecklenburg. City Council District 5 has about 80,000 registered voters. But in 2023, for the primary, the person you're primarying won with 1,900 votes. That's why she won the general with like 8,000, which is just so. What's your plan in terms, you've already said you launched this community event. What's your plan to get people to show up? It's an off year. People are tired post presidential election, which I get. We all are a little bit. There's fatigue.
There's so much to what you just said. You just have a couple of words, but there's so much to unpack there. I want to first start out with the numbers, right?
Yeah.
There were two folks that primaried the incumbent councilwoman, right?
Mhm.
If you add those two folks together, the councilwoman was actually just short of 300 votes for it to be considered a runoff race.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
but then
We got 53%. Yeah. It was like nothing. Yeah.
it was nothing, right? So the difference, if you combine the two primary opponents and the councilwoman, the difference was like around 300, 400 votes. That's not a lot. And one of the candidates had like 666 votes, right?
Right.
Which is insane though, because that's only a 300, 400 vote difference,
Bread.
right?
Right. Right.
So
So it
the
could have
second,
been.
it could have, it really, you could have gone into a runoff. You could have gotten an additional 300, 400
Mhm.
votes if you built a coalition, right? A coalition building, and you could have beat the incumbent.
Mhm.
The second thing you mentioned, right, was, folks are fatigued from the past
Little bit.
election. We're living in a crazy king-like administration. Funding is being cut across the board.
Yes.
Nonprofits are suffering. Schools are suffering. Counties, city councils are suffering. But what was the difference? Is that, and this is going to be controversial to my established Democrats. I love y'all, but Democrats don't like to primary,
They don't.
right?
Yeah. Well, and that's why you're so unusual, right?
Right. And President Biden did not want to hold a primary.
Mhm.
The Democratic Party did not want to hold a primary, right? They will tell you that anybody can nominate themselves from the floor, but it was a concentrated effort to make sure that
Yeah.
everybody was aligned with Vice President Harris.
Anybody can do it, but don't do
Anyone
it.
can do it. Exactly. And then you also had an administration that the numbers were showing great economic growth, but the people were not feeling it. And when you
Right.
speak to the people, regular voters do not care about the nuts and bolts of policy, right? They care about what they're feeling, how their pockets are
Mhm.
being impacted, whether they feel safe. Numbers can only go so far if you
Right.
just define people by numbers. If those numbers aren't telling the actual story or people aren't feeling the actual numbers, you're not going to get excitement, right? So,
Yeah.
which leads into your last part of that question. What are we going to do? Well, this campaign isn't about me. It's not about the incumbent. is
Yeah.
about the community and East Charlotte. My slogan is from East Charlotte for East Charlotte. East
I love that.
Charlotte is typically known as a predominantly Latino and immigrant community, right? Two
Mhm.
groups that I identify with. However, that's not just East Charlotte. We
Right.
are immigrants, we are Latinos, we are Black, we are African immigrants, we are Middle Eastern, we are Greek, we are South Asian, we're Asian. I mean, we are literally the melting pot of Charlotte. Like, that
Yeah.
is who we are. And it's bringing all those people together, building coalitions, identifying neighborhood leaders, and letting them know you if we're going to be a party, if we're going to be Democrats, not only should we elect Democrats, but we need to elect good Democrats. And if we're going to
Yeah.
be the party that fights for democracy, then when is it a bad time in a democracy to give people another choice? That is how we're
Ooh.
going to win. We're going to reach everyone. I don't care if you're
Yeah.
rich. I don't care if you're middle class. I don't care if you're low income. I We are going to reach every single person in East Charlotte because historically East Charlotte has been overlooked by our city council.
Yes. I love what you said, specifically around if we are going to be the party about democracy, we have to actually allow the democracy to happen, right? We have these institutional Democrats, whether they're at the city council level or the presidential level, who just sit and rest on the fact that they're Democrats. And I love what you're doing in terms of going out into the community and asking questions and figuring out what people need and where the holes are and filling in the blanks, you know?
Amy, I love that you bring that up because I just have to share this brown notebook that I'm holding right here. And I just
Hmm.
have to get another one, which kind of looks more like a Bible, which is more so really what I call this book is my Bible.
Yeah.
Um, I got another big one because I finished the one I just had, but over 200 coffees and counting
You would do that.
live in this notebook. It is
Oh,
all the concerns, the fears, the dreams and aspirations of East Charlotteans. And when you
amazing.
go on my website and you go to JD4, the
For
number 4, CLT.com/platform, you're going to see a 5-pillar platform. And it's not my ideas. It just happens to be ideas I agree with.
okay.
It is everyone's ideas. It is everything here. I spent weeks going through this, digesting it, finding common themes, finding the most need. What was the thing that was talked about the most in each coffee? What do they all have together? What ties them together? And that came about the 5-pillar platform that I drafted up, that I then sent to community leaders and said,
Hmm.
look at this. Because here's the thing, as an elected official, your responsibility is to know how the bureaucracy works and what barriers of entries are there that the community can't get in. And you need to
Hmm.
be advocating for that community, right? And if there are things that can't get done because of these barriers, then go to the community, let them know, and be like, this is how you can help me get your voice through in these bureaucratic systems, right?
Right.
But what our job is not is to tell people how they should feel.
Hmm.
That is not our job. For over 10 years, the Democratic Party has told me as a Latino man that immigration should be my top priority, my number one issue. If anything, that should be my only issue. No, as much as a former undocumented immigrant myself, it is one of my issues that I vote on,
Of course. Yeah.
but it's not the only one. I care about affording a house. I care about public transit. I care
Yeah.
about all these things. So that platform that I drafted up, it's not me telling the community what they need. It's telling me the community what they need. It's the community telling me and me reflecting that.
I feel like we have a new playbook, right? I know you already said that you want to redefine what public servants, service and servants actually mean. And I feel like this is the way to do it, right? like you, as a woman, I do feel like that has been pushed upon me. Like women's rights are the only thing that matters. And I'm like, it's part of it. It's the biggest thing, of course, right? But I care about making sure that everyone can own a home and that people can work with dignity and think, like really you've just put words to a feeling that I've had for quite some time, and now I'm being rendered speechless, and I am a yapper, so that is impressive. I'm like,
I
for those
love
of
it.
you
Two
not watching
certified
in video,
jappers and a podcast. I love it.
yeah, that's why I was like, we need more time. We need to be able to yap. That's the point, right? I'm so happy to hear all of these things and just hear all these different tactics, because I think when people hear what you're doing, they're going to want to replicate it in their communities as well, right? The majority of the people I've been speaking to are first time runners, just like yourself, first time campaigners. I mean, not organizers themselves, but first time being the candidate. And I mean, what you've done is it's one of those things. It's simple, but it is not easy. It takes a lot of time, and it is really takes a lot of focus. And to synthesize all of that information into 5 points is, I mean, that's unbelievable. I love that. So tell us a little bit more about, for those people who are not from East Charlotte, which there will be some. Tell us a little bit more about the district itself, where it's located, what it covers, and walk us through your 5 points. I know there was a lot of things all at
Yeah.
once.
Well, we are made up of so many different cultures, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are a corner of the city that is Latin American, that is Vietnamese, that's South Korean, that's Ukrainian, Russian, Palestinian. I mean, we make up so many flavors of
Mm-hmm.
the global world. The district makes up of 28 precincts. And to folks that don't know what precincts are, these are basically neighborhoods, pockets of neighborhoods. They're typically defined by the Board of Elections or the
Mm-hmm.
state when folks are drawing district maps or whatnot
Yeah.
to identify populations and what. Out of those 28 precincts, half of them are not organized, right?
Oh.
So these are folks that are not activated in their community, that are not politically engaged in any way. And here's the other thing, both Republicans and Democrats have their own precinct kind of
Right.
organizational structure, right? I'm precinct chair of precinct 34. And, it's important. Precincts are so important because people don't realize how local politics impacts the decisions made at the county level, at the
Mm-hmm.
state level, the national level. Precinct leaders elect those leaders that are in the county party.
Right.
And those leaders that are elected in the county party then elect the leaders in the state party, right? And so on and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. And then those leaders in the state party go on and become delegates for the presidential election, right? So it
Yeah.
is a domino effect. Um, the district itself, it spans from Monroe Road, so Village Lake, which is southeast Charlotte, um, goes directly down Monroe Road and then expands east,
Mm-hmm.
northeast. Um, you cover Central Avenue, which is one of the
Yeah.
biggest, most popular corridors in Charlotte. Albemarle Road up until Harrisburg Road, 485. You get bits of W.T. Harris, the Plaza extension. Really, and you really get a lot of low income communities, right? That is,
Mm-hmm.
um, but a lot of diversity as well. I
Yeah.
think East Charlotte, what is interesting is that East Charlotte is predominantly known to be Latino, to be low income, to be immigrant. But what folks don't know is that there's a lot of diversity, a diversity of culture, of income, right?
Yeah.
We have a
Yeah.
billionaire. We have, I think, multiple billionaires that live in our district, right? One of the
Okay.
billionaires used to be a former council member. And so you have a diversity of folks there. Um, and it's beautiful. It is rich. It is locally driven, but that's where the platform comes into play. Um, we have no jobs.
Mhm.
10, 15 years ago, East Charlotte had its biggest economic incubator, which was Eastland Mall.
Yep.
10, 15 years ago, it was torn down. We are now just seeing development happen on that land today. It is now just starting.
Still
Why
so.
did it take 10, 15 years to get that there? Right?
Mhm.
You had it was going to be a big park. It's going to be a big park. Then you had some kids turn it into a DIY skate park. But then who came along? The city came along and took it away
Mhm.
from them. Like it's it's been empty. Where I grew up on Independence, between Independence and Monroe Road. I
Yeah.
lived in some low income affordable housing at the time across from my high school, East Mecklenburg High. They were called Castlewood Silver Oaks Apartments. I used to be
Mhm.
able to walk behind those apartments to the Independence Shopping Center, where there was a McDonald's, there was Bates, there was a Harris Teeter, which then turned into a Compare Foods. There was a
Right.
laundromat, nail salon.
I'd
I
say a
mean,
Supercuts probably.
yes, yes, a Supercuts. There was also a thrift shop and a TJ
Yeah.
Maxx.
I used
Like
to
it
go to
was
that thrift
incredible.
shop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was incredible. And then I would walk with mi abuelita, my grandmother, may she
Mm.
rest in peace, when I was little, and we would go and sell her homemade tamales and empanadas to our neighbors in that shopping
Yeah.
center. It is now vacate. There's now a vape shop, a convenience store, a laundromat, a clothing store. But the other part that was attached to it is torn down. There's
Yeah.
now highway or freeway bypass bridge
Mhm.
right there. You're seeing some developments. The apartments I lived in were torn down. My point
Right.
is, so much of East Charlotte has been torn down, but not
And left
and left,
down. Yeah.
left out, and now
Mhm.
replenished. We
Mhm.
used to be at our prime. What
Right.
happened? Jobs went away. People left.
Mhm.
Crime got bad because when you don't have economic opportunity, you invite crime to happen.
Right. Right.
So that story of East Charlotte drove me because it's a story so many constituents were talking about.
Right.
It drove me to my first pillar, a local economy that belongs to us.
Yeah.
City council and the county and all these folks want to bring corporate jobs to East Charlotte. But who are the people that are going to be those corporate jobs? Not people that live from East Charlotte. It's going
Mhm.
to be the folks that have a higher level of education. It's going to be the folks that are moving from New York
New
City or
York,
Miami or
probably. Yeah.
California to East Charlotte, right? You're going to raise property value up. You're going to raise the cost of living up. And then you're going to start displacing folks, right? Why don't
Mhm.
we bring these corporate jobs? I'm not against bringing corporate jobs, but why don't we also pair it with training the
Training and make
community?
sure. Well, and your one of your other pillars is the safe, affordable housing, right? And that's
Right.
integral, right? When we start talking about these corporate jobs and these big centers that, billions of
And they're
dollars to
all
spend.
exactly, they're all
Yeah.
interconnected because right now in the Eastland project, yeah, it's called Eastland Yards. What you
Mhm.
have developing, they already opened some senior affordable housing, right? But only like I think 17-20% of those units being affordable income
Right.
restricted housing,
Right.
right? And then the
Right.
rest market value. And then they're building $500,000 homes,
Okay. Wow.
$500,000 homes,
What?
right?
That
And
doesn't
so
seem to fit.
it doesn't. And a lot of these folks in this community, they wake up at 6, 5 in the morning to
Mhm.
drive across town, typically South Charlotte or even Rock Hill,
Right.
South Carolina, or neighboring South Carolina town,
Yeah.
before their kids even wake up to go to school. And they get back home right when their kids are going to bed.
Right. Right. Because it's,
You're de-
you've got hours on the commute each way with traffic and
exactly. You're depriving people of living their lives, of spending time with their loved ones, with
yeah.
their friends, with their kids. We need an economy that belongs to us, which
Yeah.
then bleeds into for me, one of the important things is a city government that works for us and with us.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to drop some tea on you. Again, I told you we're in an unusual
Tell
campaign
me.
and I'm an unusual candidate, right? The last few weeks, city council has been in a scandal. City council behind closed doors decided to settle a $300,000, around $100,000 to $300,000. The exact amount isn't disclosed yet.
Okay.
To the police chief. This came off the back from a year ago. There was a dispute between a former council member who is now part of the Trump administration and the police chief over safety vests. This came off the
Okay.
back of 4 police officers in East Charlotte being killed during the line of duty.
Yes. I do
And
remember that.
the disagreement happened because the police chief was said, I don't, we're trying to mend our relationship with community, right? And these safety vests will give us a militaristic appearance, right?
Not false.
Not false, right? And then
Right.
the former council member was like, I disagree with you, and if you don't compromise, I will ruin your reputation. I'll make sure you're fired.
Mm.
That happened almost a year ago.
Okay.
Silence from city council. The council member wasn't even censured.
Wild.
A year comes by, and then this leaks that city council is deciding to pay the police chief $100K to $300K because he was upset over these text messages. Now, here is the gag to all my queer folks. Okay, you understand my lingo. Here's the gag. The gag is that there was no legal lawsuit. There was no.
So they're just giving the money up for
what?
That's it.
Behind
That
closed
is.
doors.
Then that's a. Okay, I'm not a lawyer, but when people exchange that type of money without someone knocking on the door saying, "Hi, I'm an attorney," and in a jury of your peers, it has been proven you need to pay this person this money, it smelled a little bit fishy. That's
And now let's
crazy.
give you some context. The interim city attorney, Anthony Fox, was part of these conversations, but in the room, as reports have said, instead of explaining how they got to this point and why they're deciding to do this, he embedded the fear of God into the council. That is a quote from these reports into city council members to not.
Oh my God. Oh my God. So,
Well,
I don't want to ask who leaked it, but it's out.
it's out. It got leaked. The mayor and the folks who supported this deal came out in a press conference, right? Why did they come out of a press conference? Because an at-large council member sent an email to their constituents saying, hey, power corrupts. This is the worst abuse of power I've seen. I'm not going to quote them exactly, but it was a scathing email calling out city council. There was no reference to the actual situation, but it was alluded. I mean, you just had a leak, and then this email came out, and you could just put a 2 to 2 together. They came out in this press conference with clearly the councilwoman who sent that email not in attendance.
Right.
And instead of talking and explaining to the public why they decided to use public dollars to settle with a police chief without any legal
for no reason,
they made it about the leak, and they want to find who leaked it. And they said that it's illegal and it's a criminal offense to leak information behind a closed session, which is not true. North Carolina statute, the only thing that is prohibited is personnel files. If you leak personnel files, that is a criminal offense.
And that should be, right? Like that's individual, you're doxing people. That should be illegal, right? So they indicted, who did they indict?
Oh yeah. So today, the federal government indicted a council member for fraudulent use of COVID relief funds.
Okay.
Now, it's important to know that this happened before the council member was elected to council. However, this is just a reminder that we need a symptom that we need a city government that works for us and with us. Yeah. I mean, a watchdog group said that one of these economic development deals that were made behind closed doors by city council, okay, which was giving $650 million to the Teppers, who own Charlotte FC and Carolina
Right.
Panthers, to renovate Bank of America Stadium was one of the worst deals, if in fact the worst deal, economic development deals made in the country. Okay. Now,
Uh,
how is it going? Now the city is saying that they're using specific tourist tax dollars
right.
that can only be used for that. But
Mm.
$650 million?
That's, I think sometimes when we talk about how much money these major cities are spending, we forget how much money it is, right?
And let's go, right? Let's go with the argument that those tax dollars could only be reinvested
Spent
into
one
tourism
certain way, right?
one certain way. Then why not create a tourism hub in East Charlotte? Or in a community that needs an economic incubator
Right.
that will attract outside folks to come and visit and provide economic
Yeah.
viability life to the mom and pop shops that are around Central Avenue, Albemarle Road, even in the far east of East
Hmm.
Charlotte. The third prong is neighborhoods that are safe, resilient
Yeah.
communities, houses we can stay in. So I will go into my third one and my fourth one together, right? Not only do we need affordable housing, which I feel like East Charlotte has a lot of affordable housing and we need more, right? But we
Right.
also need
Everyone
access to
does.
home ownership. We need access to home ownership.
Yeah.
But also, why is East Charlotte inundated with a bunch of affordable housing? Why can't there's is a housing trust fund, which is a bond that the Charlotte
Hmm.
voters voted on, $100 million to go into affordable housing, home ownership, um, redevelopment, preservation of
Right.
old apartments and old homes and whatnot. It's supposed to be equitable. It's supposed to be going across all of Charlotte, right? And I'm not against affordable housing. I think we need to expand affordable
Right.
housing, but East Charlotte shouldn't be the only place that gets affordable housing, right?
Right. Well, and
It should be equitable.
there needs to be programs. Well, and part of like, of course, part of this is you grew up in the Charlotte school system, so did I. We are at least in the public schools, we were not taught a lot around things like financial literacy that I think should be incorporated into it, right? Because we need to be
Right.
teaching young people how much it costs to buy a home and like how to get there. And there should be programs for people who are in apartments that want to buy a first home and things like that. And that stock needs to be available. They're not buying, no one's buying a $500,000 first
Absolutely.
home. That's not a first, that's not a, we in the United States call it a starter home. That's not your first purchase at
Yeah.
500,000. It's crazy.
Oh, it's crazy. And the excuse that council members give is that the land value is low in East
But the
Charlotte. And the
property
reason they're
value
not
will go up if you invest in
right.
it.
And that
Mhm.
areas like in South Charlotte or in where South End is and things like that, the reason they're not getting inundated with affordable housing is because their land value is so expensive, right? And it's like,
But
well,
10 years ago, South End, 15 years ago, South End was not, that land value was not there, right? And I understand
right,
they get a big boost with the rail that goes through that, right? There's public transit that goes right through there. But this is how we change the land value, right? We
this is
invest in
how
the
it changes.
community. We
Right.
invest in the community, we invest in the people, we bring the jobs, we make it safer, we build the homes.
And I'm not saying that this is what they're saying, but to me, when they say that, what it translates
That's what you
is
hear.
these
Yeah.
areas that have nice amenities, that have terrace theaters, have Publix, that have walkable streets, right? Affordable housing isn't good enough for them. That is
Right.
what I'm hearing, is that the folks that need to live in affordable housing can have access to amenities. So send them to East Charlotte where there is no amenities, right?
Right.
We are a food
Right.
desert. We are a
Hmm.
food desert. It's insane. Which then bleeds into the other thing. We can't talk about neighborhoods without talking about public safety. And
Right.
Democrats don't like to talk about crime or public safety because they think it's racist. Well, I argue that it's racist for you not to consider
Not to
Black and
talk
brown
about it.
folks. Exactly. It
Yeah.
impacts East Charlotte, diverse, low-income communities just as much as it impacts South Charlotte
Hmm.
or Myers Park or what have you. And it's not only law enforcement, it is investing in social services.
It's the social, exactly.
We have
Mhm.
unhoused folks all over East Charlotte. We need to be
Mhm.
helping them, right? We need to
Yeah.
connect them. And I don't think that our local government should work in silos, right? There are
No.
partnerships, but a lot of the time, city council does one thing, county does another thing. No, we need to work together to make sure that these health services that the county has jurisdiction over, we as city council are directing them to that. And we're providing
100%.
easy, accessible ways. And I was speaking to one of my interns the other day, and what I loved that they said is our resources and our policies should not only be, no, they should be digestible, not just accessible.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Crazy how
I
that,
was,
like, everyone should be able to understand when they're looking at the city, the county website, they should know where they need to go. It should be very easy. It should be very accessible.
and what about the family that relies on one
Yeah.
computer, that the
Right.
kids
And
are using it for
sharing.
homework, their parents are using it to apply to jobs or pay bills and things like
Yeah.
that? We need to be able to reach all these communities and think about that, which then leads me to my fifth and last pillar. We need to have the freedom to move. For so
Hmm.
long, East Charlotte has been overlooked by public transit, right?
Yes.
The
Wait,
city is
before you
pushing
jump
more.
in there,
Yeah.
give me 1 second here. For those people listening who are not from Charlotte, public transit across the city has been a problem in the last 15, 20 years. They've started to increase it in certain areas. And of course, it's in these areas where almost every family has at least one car, possibly two cars. And it's mind-bogglingly frustrating to watch this happen where we know that parts of the cities need this transit even more so than the other parts where, we started out kind of all on an even playing field of all the city needed these public transit hubs. As we now know that there are even public transit deserts. Carry on. Sorry.
No, that's perfect segue because we've been promised a silver line extension
Yes.
from Bojangles Coliseum to Matthews, which would touch
Yes.
parts of East Charlotte. It would touch Sharon Amity. It would touch Independence. It would touch Idlewild. It would touch Village Lake, and it would go to Matthews.
Huge.
And that it would be huge. It would be
Yeah.
huge. But now the city is wanting to push this idea of better bus. Okay.
Okay.
Why are we investing in more buses? Why are we investing in public transit if folks don't feel safe? One, in our public
Yeah.
transit system.
Yeah.
Two, if traffic and congestion is such a huge problem in East Charlotte. And
Why are we doing
three,
buses? Yeah.
and there's arguments, there's valid arguments of like, well, look what happened to South Boulevard when the rail
Hmm.
came in, right? And
Sure.
it gentrified folks and things like that. Well, we need to start thinking outside the box. We
Right.
need to why? Because now the idea is rail is only for the highly condensed areas and the highly rich areas. But
Right.
why can it be to us as well? Why does that have to come with rail? So we
Hmm.
need to think outside the box and find different ways, creative ways, mechanism, policy disruptors that will prevent gentrification like it did in South Boulevard when the
Right.
rail came for East Charlotte, right? And that's really it. And the local economy that belongs to us, a
Yes.
city government that is transparent and accountable, neighborhoods that we can stay in, houses we can afford, and public safety, right?
Mhm.
The
And it's
feeling
all
that this
intertwined,
it's all
right?
in.
Of course. I know that we're coming up on the time where you need to wrap things up. So where can people follow you? Can people, where can people sign up to volunteer for your campaign? All of the good stuff. Plug all of those pluggables.
Absolutely. Well, if you go to JD, the number 4CLT.com, you'll find more about me.
Yeah.
You'll find our platform. You will also find our resource page. I update it constantly as I go and talk to more
Amazing.
communities and more nonprofits. I put resources on there for our constituents and honestly for anyone that lives in Charlotte. You can donate to our campaign. We are funded solely on grassroots efforts. We do not accept the typical PACs, right? We accept the
Mhm.
good PACs, right? Because I believe there are good
Yes,
PACs, and
100%.
but we are solely grassroots efforts. We have hit our fundraising goal every week. It's been wonderful. The response
Hell
has been
yeah.
great. And if you go to the bottom of our page, you can sign up to keep yourself informed about this movement that we're doing for East Charlotte, and honestly for all of Charlotte. And you can also volunteer if you live in Charlotte.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we got to have this conversation. You are so interesting and so fun, and I'm leaving this feeling very inspired about our next generation of civil servants and public servants. So thank you.
No, thank you. And I'm Latino, so I can talk forever. So I'm sorry I talked your head off.
No, it's totally fine. That's why I wanted to give us more time. If you've made it this far, thank you so much. Thank you for following The Foolish Optimist. You can follow us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, pretty much. We're going to be dropping new episodes every Wednesday, and you can watch the video episodes on YouTube. If you would like to, please give us a review, leave comments. You can also email us at thefoolishoptimistpodcast@gmail.com. If you see any really great candidates that I should be talking to, send them my way. Thank you.